Now to FBI Director Kash Patel, who has fired at least 6 agents tied to the 2022 search of President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. That's what 6 people familiar with the matter tell NBC News. But 3 of those sources say at least 10 employees were ultimately dismissed. As you may recall, the FBI search was connected to the federal investigation into President Trump's handling of classified documents after he left the White House in 2021. He had pleaded not guilty and denied any wrongdoing. That case was ultimately dismissed by a judge who was appointed by President Trump. Joining us now, NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. Monica, walk us through what we've learned about these employees who were fired, and has there been any response from the White House or the FBI at this point? FBI Director Kash Patel is in the news for making some pretty shocking moves. He has fired at least 6 agents who were involved in the investigation related to the search at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. According to 6 people who shared this with NBC News, some sources suggest that the number could be as high as 10. You might remember that the FBI search was part of a federal investigation into how Trump handled classified documents after leaving the White House in 2021. He has consistently denied any wrongdoing and pleaded not guilty. Interestingly, a judge who was appointed by Trump eventually dismissed that case. Now, what's particularly concerning is how Patel, who is known to be loyal to Trump and is himself under investigation regarding those classified documents, seems to be on a firing spree. It appears he's going through the FBI like a whirlwind, dismissing agents who were simply doing their jobs investigating him and Trump. It's unclear whether these dismissals are based on any actual misconduct. It seems more like payback for their involvement in those investigations. In a rather unsettling twist, this situation is starting to resemble what you might see in countries where the rule of law has broken down, and where those in power retaliate against anyone who challenges them. This week alone, Patel has reportedly let go of 10 to 12 agents and support staff connected to the Mar-a-Lago case. Some of those dismissals happened in just the past few days, indicating an ongoing purge. Patel is justifying these firings with an excuse that doesn't hold much water. He claims that the agents improperly obtained his phone records while he was a private citizen in 2022 and 2023, and he seems to be using this as a flimsy reason to target everyone involved in the Trump investigation. It's all starting to look like a witch hunt aimed not just at punishing those who investigated him, but also at intimidating others within the FBI who might be considering doing their job. Breaking moments ago, MS Now's Carol Lennick and Ken Delanian are reporting that the FBI has just fired at least 7 FBI agents and support staff as a result of their role in the classified documents case. This is involving records Donald Trump kept at his club at Mar-a-Lago. Now, that is according to 3 people familiar with the matter. An FBI spokesperson did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the terminations. Well, MS Now senior investigative correspondent Carol Lennick, who just broke that story, joins us. Also with us is Christina Greer, associate professor of political science at Fort University. She's the author of How to Build a Democracy, from Fannie Lou Hamer and Barbara Jordan to Stacey Abrams. Just recently, I caught wind of some breaking news. Carol Lennick and Kandanian from MS now reported that the FBI has terminated at least 7 of its agents and support staff connected to the classified documents case involving records Donald Trump kept at his Mar-a-Lago club. This information comes from a few folks who are in the know, but the FBI hasn't commented on these terminations yet. Joining the conversation are Carol Lennick, who broke this story, and Christina Greer, an associate professor of political science at Fordham University. She's also the author of a book about building democracy featuring figures like Fannie Lou Hamer and Barbara Jordan, right up to Stacey Abrams. Now, here's the deeper issue at play. This situation isn't just about firing staff, it's about sending a pretty ominous message. The takeaway is clear and worrying. If you dare to investigate Trump, you risk losing everything: your career, reputation, and even your stability in life. Employees across the federal government are getting this message loud and clear. They see what Patel is doing, and they realize the FBI is no longer operating as an independent body. It's becoming a tool for political revenge. This shift is alarming because it undermines democracy, the rule of law, and everything America is supposed to represent. Now, regarding the phone records, Patels were actually subpoenaed as part of a standard federal investigation, a pretty routine process. When authorities are looking into a criminal case, they obtain call logs and toll records to trace who called whom and when. Though these records don't reveal what was actually discussed, a federal judge signed off on these subpoenas, and that's how our legal system is designed to function. Investigators follow the proper steps, securing warrants and getting judicial approval before proceeding. So there's nothing improper or unusual about this at all. So, let's talk about Kash Patel and what's been going on lately because it's quite the story. First off, Patel got called to testify before a grand jury back in 2022, and he did so under immunity. Essentially, that means he could speak freely without fear of any repercussions. There was no backlash, no misconduct involved in his testimony. However, he's turned this situation into a reason to dismiss investigators who were looking into him and his boss, which just screams revenge. It really reminds me of those authoritarian governments where leaders go after anyone who dares to investigate them or their buddies. The twist here is that Patel played a direct role in the whole Trump classified documents issue. He was an advisor during the scandal, claiming he was even there when Trump supposedly declassified those documents. So naturally, the investigators had to look into Patel as well, since he was part of what they were digging into. That's just standard protocol, following the facts where they lead, interviewing witnesses, and gathering records properly. But now, with Patel as the FBI director, he's taking a drastic step and firing these agents for simply doing their jobs. It's mind-boggling. Honestly, this sort of behavior is a blatant attack on the rule of law and a real threat to our democratic institutions. What's more troubling is that he's not just stopping with the agents involved in the classified documents case. He's also been firing people connected to the January 6th incidents and those who looked into anything related to Trump. If he thinks an agent isn't loyal enough to Trump, that agent is at risk of being shown the door. Over the past year, he's pushed out numerous FBI employees, many of whom were involved in investigations regarding Trump or had links to January 6 cases. Some were even let go for simply taking a knee during racial justice demonstrations after George Floyd's tragic death. It's honestly hard to believe that's the reason given. Patel viewed it as anti-police and didn't like it, so out they went. The FBI Agents Association, which represents all those hardworking agents, has come out swinging against these firings, calling them unconstitutional and a clear violation of due process rights. They've made it clear that these are the same men and women who put their lives on the line every day to uphold the law. It's pretty shocking what's unfolding, especially when you look at how things are happening with the FBI. Several agents are losing their jobs without any proper process, all because they worked on cases that the Trump administration didn't like. Some of those former agents have even decided to fight back and are suing Kash Patel in federal court. One of these agents, Brian Driscoll, had been the acting FBI director before Patel got confirmed by the Senate. Driscoll found himself pushed out after he refused to give the Trump administration a list of agents involved in the January 6 cases. Just think about that for a moment. The Trump team actually approached him and asked for the names of all the agents looking into the events of that day. When he said no, they got rid of him. That's just pure retaliation, punishing someone for not participating in what feels like a witch hunt against hardworking FBI folks. Now, this isn't just some isolated incident, it's happening on a massive scale. The FBI handed over a list of 5,100 agents who worked on the January 6th matters, and guess who has that list? Patel. One can only imagine what he's doing with it, reviewing those names to see who might be next for firing or intimidation. This truly feels like a purge, an outright assault on the independence of law enforcement. To understand what's at stake, it helps to know who Kash Patel is. His background paints a pretty clear picture. He's known as a Trump loyalist and tends to push some extreme views, including releasing false conspiracy theories. He isn't someone who climbed the ladders of the FBI. He's a political operative through and through. During Trump's first term, he served as an advisor and was openly critical of the Russia investigation, even writing a memo that took aim at the FBI's probe into it. He was entrenched in Trump's efforts to undermine investigations into the former president, aligning himself with nearly every controversy surrounding Trump. He even went as far as publishing a so-called enemy list of 60 individuals he labeled as part of the deep state. And now he's calling the shots at the FBI. So, after Trump lost the 2020 election, and as the Justice Department assigned a special counsel named Jack Smith to look into Trump's classified documents and attempts to overturn the election, Patel was likely watching from a distance, possibly seething. Smith's investigation was nothing short of aggressive, and it seems Patel is intent on taking action in response to that. The whole situation surrounding Trump has taken quite a turn, marking a historic moment as he became the first former president to face federal criminal charges. He's looking at 40 felony counts, which include some serious accusations like violating the Espionage Act and conspiracy, not to mention making false statements to federal investigators. The evidence against him was thorough, well-documented, and solid. What really stands out now is how Kash Patel, who was an advisor to Trump during this entire classified document saga, is getting involved. He claims he was right there when Trump announced he was declassifying those documents. Investigators needed to dig deeper, looking into Trump's associates to figure out who knew what and when. They got Patel's phone records and subpoenaed his communications, which is just standard practice in these kinds of investigations. A federal judge looked over those subpoenas and gave them the green light, so everything was done legally and properly. But here's where it gets interesting. Patel, now in a huge position as FBI director, is acting like this whole routine investigation is some violation of his constitutional rights. He's calling the actions outrageous and alarming. The truth is, the FBI didn't secretly obtain his records. It was all above board with a court order. Instead of just being another witness in this investigation, he's decided to portray himself as a victim. Now he wants to fire every investigator who was involved in Trump's case, claiming they crossed the line. The reality is that they followed legal protocols and courts have confirmed their findings as lawful. Patel is even saying that Jack Smith acted improperly, but the courts have backed up the validity of the investigation. And let's not forget his confirmation hearing where he made a promise that all FBI employees would be safe from political retaliation. It's honestly hard to believe he said that out loud. So here's what's going on. There's been a real shakeup at the FBI, and it's not what they promised. They said there wouldn't be any retaliation, that the agency would focus on the future and stay nonpartisan. But instead, we're seeing a targeted effort to remove anyone who has worked on cases related to Trump. What's even more alarming is the actions of Patel, who's taken it upon himself to look into the very investigators working on these cases. He's launched an investigation into the investigation about the president's alleged mishandling of classified documents. It's wild. He's questioning why his records got subpoenaed, why he was investigated, and even why his phone calls were monitored. It's important to remember that those agents were simply doing their jobs, conducting a legitimate investigation into serious matters involving a former president. Now, Patel seems to be flipping the script, treating normal law enforcement procedures like there's something scandalous. That sends a pretty scary message to every FBI agent out there. It implies that if you dare to look into someone tied to Trump, you could lose your job, face punishment, or even get investigated yourself. Essentially, this puts Trump and his associates in a position where they're virtually untouchable, which is a dangerous move for the rule of law. The pattern is painfully clear. Patel has been firing agents who were involved in investigations related to January 6th, marking a shift in the AY's priorities. He's even got a list of over 5,000 agents connected to those cases, and he seems to be going through it systematically. After a lawsuit from an agent over fears of retaliation, the FBI had to hand over that list, which just goes to show that those concerns were valid. Retaliation is right in front of us. One agent was actually forced out just for refusing to name others who worked on January 6th investigations. That's not effective management. It feels more like a witch hunt, a heavy-handed tactic you'd expect to see in a dictatorship, and now it's unfolding right here in the United States. But it doesn't stop at firings. Patel has plans to reshape the FBI even further. He wants to close down the historic J. Edgar Hoover building, which has been the AY's headquarters since 1975. He's also looking to relocate around 1,500 agents out of Washington, D.C., transferring them to field offices spread across the country. He claims these moves are in the name of reform, but it all feels like a significant shift in how the agency operates. Let's dive into what's been happening lately. So, there's this talk about reshaping the FBI, and it's not just about tackling crime more efficiently. There's a bigger picture here. The plan includes shutting down the Hoover Building and turning it into a museum dedicated to what they call the deep state. It gets even more interesting because there's a target on journalists and media professionals too. The idea is to completely overhaul the Washington headquarters and scatter the employees. This is all part of a grand vision to get rid of anyone seen as not loyal enough to Trump, aiming to turn the FBI into an organization filled with Trump loyalists instead of keeping it independent. Now, understanding the implications of this so-called FBI purge is really important. There are 4 crucial points to keep in mind about this situation. First off, this is a blatant attack on the independence of law enforcement. The FBI is meant to operate free from political influence, and that's the very reason behind having an independent institution. Their job is to investigate crimes based on evidence without worrying about someone's political connections or how much they're favored by the current president. But this system only works if agents feel secure in doing their jobs without fear of retaliation. If they think they might lose their jobs for looking into the wrong person, especially if it's someone connected to Trump, they might just shy away from those investigations altogether. They'll come up with excuses to avoid pursuing those cases, downscale their efforts, and that completely undermines the integrity of law enforcement. Just imagine the fear that spreads through the FBI when agents see Patel firing those who looked into Trump. The message would definitely be clear. Stay away from investigating Trump, his allies, and his associates, or your career is in jeopardy. That's how authoritarian regimes operate. They clamp down on investigations of people in power. There's no need for explicit orders, just a few firings, and everyone else catches on quickly to the risks involved. Suddenly, anyone holding a position of power becomes off-limits for scrutiny. Patel is effectively dismantling the FBI's independence by punishing agents who dare to investigate Trump. Second, this approach is in direct contradiction to what Patel promised during his confirmation hearing. It seems like a complete flip from the commitment he made then. After promising the Senate that he would make sure FBI employees were safe from political backlash, Patel turned around and lied. He assured them there would be no retaliation and that the Bureau would stay away from politics. But just weeks after getting confirmed, he started firing agents left and right. He even pushed out the acting FBI director who wouldn't give him the names of agents who looked into the events of January 6th. It's like he's on a mission to clean house, targeting anyone who dared to investigate Trump or that day, or anyone he thought wasn't loyal enough. It's really something when someone makes promises to the Senate, gets confirmed based on those very promises, and then just throws them out the window as if they never mattered. That's not how our government is supposed to function, and it goes against the Constitution too. When someone straight up lies to Congress and breaks their commitments, you'd think there would be repercussions. But that's not happening here. Patel is slipping by without a care. Now, let's talk about the excuses he's throwing around for these firings, which are pretty flimsy at best. He's claiming the agents got his phone records the wrong way, but in reality, those records were obtained through the proper legal channels. A federal judge approved those subpoenas, proving the investigators were doing everything by the book. This is just how criminal investigations roll. You gather records, phone logs, emails, and you talk to witnesses to get to the bottom of it. And that's exactly what these agents were doing, just their jobs. Patel is trying to spin this as if he's the victim, claiming his rights were violated simply because the agents were conducting a legitimate investigation into how Trump handled classified documents. It's basically a weak excuse to justify what looks like a political purge. Even the Justice Department has issued a statement saying that looking into subpoena information for folks around Trump is standard procedure during an investigation, routine, and appropriate. But Patel is making it sound like something underhanded, using his flimsy defense to fire people who were just doing their jobs investigating him. This behavior has serious implications for national security and law enforcement. The FBI Agents Association has made that clear, And it's a concerning situation we're in. Firing experienced agents is a real hit for the FBI. These folks have spent years developing their skills, particularly in handling classified documents and understanding national security laws. When Kash Patel lets these seasoned investigators go, he's essentially taking away the expertise the Bureau needs to function effectively. The Agents Association has pointed out that this not only weakens the agency, but also destabilizes the entire workforce. Imagine being an FBI agent and watching your colleagues get fired for trying to do their jobs. It creates an atmosphere of fear and demoralization, which is definitely not good for morale. Who would want to work somewhere where doing your job could mean losing your job? Recruiting new talent is going to get tougher too. Young lawyers definitely aren't going to line up to join an organization that treats its employees like this. The best minds may just decide to head to the private sector or find work with other agencies. This entire situation raises the stakes for national security. A weakened FBI with low morale and missing expertise doesn't just affect the Bureau, it puts the entire country at greater risk. And here's something particularly unsettling. Some of these fired agents are taking legal action against Patel, claiming that their firings are unconstitutional and violate due process. They argue that it's retaliatory. And you know what? They may have a case, but the process of suing an employer for wrongful termination is no walk in the park. It can drag on for years, winding through all the bureaucratic hoops. The agents will have to demonstrate they were let go because of retaliation and prove that their rights were violated. In the meantime, their lives are thrown into turmoil. Losing a job can mean relocating, searching for new employment, and all those stressors that come with it, like mortgages and family stability. Their security clearances could be at stake and reputations might take a hit. So Patel fires them. They sue and the whole process takes forever to sort out. That sends a pretty clear message to every other agent out there. It's a tough, risky environment to work in. If you're in a position where you might investigate the wrong person, it can lead to serious trouble. You could end up losing your job, spending years tangled in legal battles, and watching your career go down the drain. So, it's understandable that most people would rather steer clear of such risky investigations. That's exactly what Kash Patel is aiming for. The trend here is unmistakable. Take a look back at what happened when Trump fired FBI Director James Comey in 2017. It was all tied to Comey probing Trump's connections to Russia. Trump publicly called Comey a liar, labeled him disloyal, and dismissed the Russia investigation as a hoax. This firing made it quite clear that Comey was let go partly because he was looking into Trump. Now Trump has appointed Patel as FBI director, and he seems to be following the same playbook but on a much grander scale. Instead of just one person, he's letting go dozens of agents and kicking off internal investigations into other investigators. It's creating this intimidating atmosphere throughout the FBI. Patel's message to every agent out there is loud and clear. If you investigate Trump or anyone connected to him, your career is over and your life will be a mess. Don't even think about it. This is the kind of scenario that's quite likely to lead to fired agents suing. I can imagine the courts will probably determine that at least some firings weren't lawful, but that could take years. In the meantime, what's really important is the message that's been sent. The FBI will likely take a softer approach to investigating Trump. Who wants to gamble their career? Federal prosecutors will be on edge. Other law enforcement agencies will hesitate, and suddenly Trump is finding himself pretty much untouchable. Nobody's going to dig into his affairs because there's this fear of retaliation. No one will scrutinize his actions at all. That's how authoritarianism creeps in. It doesn't explode onto the scene. It gradually seeps in through firings, intimidation, and attacks on the independence of institutions. This is a textbook case of authoritarianism in action. Much like what dictators do when consolidating power, they punish anyone looking too closely at them, weaving a web of fear and control. It's so clear that Patel and Trump are crafting this terrifying environment in law enforcement, punishing those just trying to do their jobs and undermining the autonomy of federal agencies. You know, it's pretty wild how openly they're going about this. There's no hiding it or pretending it isn't happening. Patel is just out there saying he's investigating the investigators, and he's not shy about firing agents connected to Trump's cases either. His reasons for doing so are pretty flimsy when you think about it, but because he's so upfront, everybody gets the message loud and clear. People understand the implications of investigating Trump now. And that's why this is significant at this moment. It's not just a small issue. It feels like a direct challenge to the rule of law and democracy itself. It's unsettling to see a president and an FBI director punishing those who are looking into them. This isn't how justice works, nor is this what law enforcement is supposed to be about. It feels like a move toward authoritarianism, a hallmark of nations that are starting to lose their democratic foundations. So, I'll be diving into what Congress can do to put a stop to this alarming trend and whether they actually have the backbone to uphold the independence of law enforcement and the rule of law in our country. In the next video,